Looks like we're getting some more Catherine full body news. Let's hop over to One Angry Gamer. So, May 24th. Actually, no. February 23rd. There we go. This was the original story at OAG regarding the changes for Catherine full body from the original release in Japan to the Western release. Basically, this voice actress, we're not going to read this whole thing, just a quick recap. Voice actress says that, the Western release is going to be adjusted for bigotry. Make some allegations against the game, saying that there was bigotry due to a certain character's name at the end, and one of the cutscenes at the ending as well, not displaying that character in the way that they should be, is what that voice actress had alleged, more or less. So that was the old news. Oh, hold up. That was the old news. Then we had the news on May 24th. Catherine starts to succumb to a censorship brigade. Basically, the concerns, the concerns, right, that voice actress had originally were then proliferated. The same concerns were then proliferated over on Reset Era, and they started to brigade Atlus to force these changes on the Western release. And that brings us to today's article, which we will cover in just a moment. I will see you then. So let's see what this new article is all about. Oh, geez. Sega says Catherine Full Body's Western release will be the same game as Japan. So that sounds good, and I didn't read this article, but I skimmed down to the comment section. But the comment section sounds like they're concerned, like it's not a good thing. So I think this is probably not as good as it sounds. I mean, the title implies that, Sega saying, oh, it's going to be the same game. No changes. I was like happy. I'm like, all right, they're not actually adjusting the Western release. But it seems like what they're getting at, and I could be jumping the gun because obviously we haven't read this together yet, but what they're getting at maybe is that even though we're changing things, it's still going to be the same game, But let's take a look at the article. Enough speculation. Let's see what's up. Sega of America's communication manager Jonathan Stebble revealed in a recent interview that the Western release of Catherine Full Body will be the same as the release in Japan, even though there have already been reports of censorship. It turns out things are a little more complicated than what Stebble lets on. Yeah, because it doesn't sound very complicated if you're saying it's the same. So I think it's what we're speculating on, guys. Let's see. In the interview with Dual Shockers, Stebble attempts to explain that both versions of the game are the same, telling the outlet, and we have a quote here, "What we do in localization is so complex that anyone who tries to grab an individual scene from a Japanese game and translate it themselves, they're not going to get the full context of what's going on. There are various timelines in play. There are various motivations in play that really get lost without the context of the entire game leading up to that scene we're discussing now. So in terms of content between the Japanese and Western releases of the game, there's not going to be anything that is disingenuously represented. You're going to get the same game as Japan." So this does sound a little bit concerning. It does. And, there's some more clarification down here. Let's see what this says. However, Sankaku Complex were not fooled. The outlet pointed out that it had already been confirmed back in May that Catherine Full Body was being censored for Western releases, which we discussed briefly at the beginning of this video. But it sounded like maybe they were backtracking on that and not changing things. Ah, man. This followed on reports from one of the English voice actresses claiming that the localization team would be addressing the game's bigotry after a bunch of people at Reset Era managed to pull strings to get Catherine's Full Body to trend, claiming that the game was redacted. Well, Stebble actually did comment to Dual Shockers about the scene in question, but refused to call it quote-unquote censorship, and instead talked around the issue and said that people would have to come up with their own interpretation. Oh my god. Is that really? Is that really what it is? Yeah, it's not censorship. You're going to have to interpret what this is on your own, but it certainly isn't censorship. You can interpret it in any way except as censorship, even though we are restricting what can be said. Yeah, but don't worry. It's not censorship. It's anything else. Call it a McDonald's hamburger, for God's sake. Anything but censorship, right? This is ridiculous. Wow. So we have another quote here. Let's see. "A lot of the members of the localization team for Full Body worked on the original Catherine as well. We always do post-mortems for games. We look back and say, what could we have done better? Many years ago, we said if we ever do Catherine again, probably shouldn't dead name Erica. But I think for that scene in question, there's just context, there's misinterpretations and mistranslations out there, and it's hard to get the actual story. So what they're referring to is the credits for Erica. I forget exactly what went down with this. I think the character went from Eric to Erica in the game, but in the credits they named her Eric, if I recall, and not Erica, or something along those lines. We can take a look. I'll go reiterate that at the end of the video. I'll take a look and get you the exact info on that once we finish this article up. But I think for that scene in question, there's just context. There's misinterpretations, mistranslations out there, and it's hard to get the actual story. But even as a PR person living in 2019, I'm not really concerned about that scene. You will need the full context to really understand what's going on there and come up with your own interpretation afterwards. But again, people can come up with their own interpretations of the game, and that's totally fair. So we're not here to tell people what they should think of the game either. So I think it's going to cause a lot of discussions, but that's probably a good thing in the long run too. Well, yeah, that brings up another interesting point. Something that we've been talking about for a while with these companies that go woke. And even when they see other companies go woke and then lose sales, it does bring up the argument, why still go woke? Are they doing it for publicity? Some of these companies, for example, like let's just say Burger King with their like woke boxes or whatever. Some of you guys probably don't know what I'm talking about. Basically, Burger King had released a set of like they were not called like woke boxes, but that's pretty much what they were. It was like meals in boxes that display certain woke tendencies, you know, so they were promoting it to that sort of audience, and it received a lot of backlash for it. But they also received a lot of publicity because of doing so. A lot of people were talking about it, so it makes you wonder, do these companies do this not to increase sales, but to increase their brand name, to strengthen their brand name, and then maybe short term they see a decrease in sales, and long term they see an increase? I don't know. That's not really a great argument. I think it hurts their brand name. That's why I don't think it's a good argument. But, you know, who knows what these companies think? It doesn't make sense. A lot of the time, these woke companies or, you know, social media posts that are all woke or whatever, it just doesn't make logical sense why people do the things they do sometimes. And companies are just groups of people, you know. Companies are also entities, literally. I mean, that's what makes them up. So it is what it is. Let's finish this up, though. DualShockers kept pushing the matter, though, claiming that parts of the game has redacted coding. This forced Devil to talk about the internal cultural review committee, who make sure that Atlus's content is appropriate for Western audiences. Oh my goodness. Internal cultural review committee, who make sure that Atlus's content is appropriate for Western releases. Now, I might not be remembering correctly the other articles I've read about this, and there's been like 3 or 4 that I've read about this. I don't think I've ever seen anything about an Atlus internal cultural review committee. We've heard of things like that for other companies, right? Like, I'm forgetting the term for it right now, but you know, Starbucks had this, for example. It was news a while back where Starbucks was forcing their, I think it was a diversity manager, something like that, a community diversity manager, something like that. And Starbucks was forcing employees to take these diversity classes, and it's so, oh my goodness, you know, I don't want to start ranting about that. That's a whole other discussion. Long story short, these classes really don't even know what they set out to achieve. They're just very vague. They just cause the company to spend money on like needless expenses, and they actually make people less tolerant because they're trying to force what the company hires, and you know, force what the staff of the company is like, and that just causes intolerance. It's completely hypocritical. It's a complete sham in my opinion. Anyways, like I said, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on that one, so let's continue. I thought we read this already, actually. I guess it's just DualShockers is being used a lot. In the article, DualShockers quotes and paraphrases Devil, explaining, another quote here, "I can't speak for Japanese promotions," Devil said, responding to my point about the coded imagery being used to promote the game. "But I would say that the full game is not like that. Stebble mentioned to me that localization team has an internal cultural review committee." Oh, wow. Let's get that one more time. Stebble mentioned to me that the localization team has an internal cultural review committee. So it sounds like the localization team for Atlus has an internal cultural review committee, which, you know, maybe that's, who knows? That could be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Who knows? That's still like ridiculous though. Like internal cultural review committee. And you guys are not, and here's the thing too. They have this committee, I guess, right? They're not actually looking at the culture of the West. That woke culture they're pandering to is not the main Western culture. It's a small, vocal, angry minority of people. So they're completely failing if that's what they're localization, committee or whatever is looking at. They're appealing to something that's not even really Western culture. It's not. What kind of job are they doing? Holy smokes. Where do we leave off? Stebble mentioned to me that the localization team has an internal cultural view committee that reviews everything from overseas to ensure that content is suitable for a Western audience. And literally what I just said, that's not being suitable for a Western audience. That's being suitable for a very specific group of people who are just upset and probably, very, very probably, won't buy your game anyways. And here's the thing. The last time I covered this, I already called this. I called it ahead of time because I saw comments later in the video that literally backed what I was saying up. I was saying when Atlus was pandering to these people, it wasn't going to be good enough, and they were still going to be mad at Atlus. I was basically saying, like, okay, so Atlus is going to pander to them in Catherine, right? These people are still going to be upset about maybe things in Catherine, but they're still going to be upset, especially about, like, their complaints in Persona, etc. And sure enough, it was. When you saw the Reset Era thread from the last changes that Atlus made, these people were still giving them, a hard time for the past things that they had issues with. And they said, it's okay that Atlus is changing, but I'm not going to praise them for this because they still did X, Y, Z wrong. This never works out in your favor, Atlus. From overseas to ensure that content is suitable for a Western audience while also representing the content genuinely. And back to Billy D here. I believe he's the one who wrote this article. I actually didn't check, but Billy D usually does a lot of the articles here on OAG, and he does a great job. That doesn't sound good at all. Article continues on. A lot of centrists will argue that everything is fine, and since Stebble didn't use the word censorship, nothing was probably censored, but we've seen this song and dance before, and we all know how it ends. Especially when we've had warnings for months now about this potential censorship. I'm adding that part. Nexon didn't want to call Hyper Universe's changes censorship, but the results were still the same, and that's why it ended up on the Get Woke, Go Broke master list. Judgment's localizers took liberties with infusing social political jargon in the game in order to subliminally what is this word? Inculcate. That one, guys, I'm going to be honest. Listen, I'm not the best grammar person. I really am not. And that one is a tough one. Insulate. You know what I think? I think I got it. I've heard that word a lot. I know what it means. I don't think I've ever actually seen it spelt out, though, to be honest. That tripped me up for a good second there. You know what? You can laugh at me all you want. As long as you're entertained, I'm happy. Subliminally insulate gamers with feminist ideology. Funimation. Ooh, we're bringing Funimation into this now. Ooh, now I'm getting really excited. Unfortunately, this is near the end of the article, but hey, I'm always down to talk about Funimation. And for those of you who might be new to my channel in this video, just look up HeroHei Funimation. I've covered Funimation a lot. That's all I'm going to say about that. Funimation's localizers attempted to use the opportunity to also alter dialogue for their own ideological agenda, and in response, Funimation silenced their naysayers by screaming about harassment. Blade and Soul's localizers censored the game and altered story content in order to accommodate their own feminist ideology, and then they censored the community's email campaigns to NCSoft that were aimed at getting the company to remove the censorship. The stories just keep piling up about localizers using their positions for the purpose of pushing that agitprop. Will Catherine Full Body be a different story? It's hard to tell from Stebble's comments since he didn't want to commit to saying there would be no censorship, while also at the same time saying that it would be the same as the Japanese version. Then again, NCSoft said the same thing about Blade and Soul, and we all know how that turned out, don't we? Catherine Full Body is due out on September 3rd, 2019 for the PS4 in the West. And let's see who wrote this article. It's probably Billy D. Yep, Billy D, my man. Thank you for your work. As usual, I appreciate it. Good write-up, my friend. So this is certainly a concerning topic, especially because there's that age-old rumor or age-old saying. Not really. I'm kidding on both accounts. But people say, right, that Japan will never pander to outrage culture. As a whole, maybe not, but we do see some companies here and there are starting to indeed pander a little bit to it. Nothing crazy just yet, but it is something to be concerned about. I think it's a very foolish endeavor to assume that Japan, will never pander to outrage culture. I also think it's a bit foolish to loop Japan as like one whole thing. To say all of Japan will eventually pander is silly. To say none of it will is equally silly in my opinion. But that's just my opinion though. You don't have to agree with it, and that's totally fine if you don't. I appreciate differing opinions if you don't agree or if you agree. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about that in general, outrage culture in Japan. Let me know what you think about Catherine Full Body. Do you believe what we're being told about the game being the same. Nothing is changed. He didn't say that. He just said it'd be the same game. And I think he's playing with, what's the word here? He's playing with arguing semantics, right? He's playing with semantics, I think. But we'll see. We'll find out early September. Got some shout outs for the last video I made for the wonderful people on Twitter who helped promote said video. And if it was posted elsewhere, like Facebook or anywhere, right, I appreciate it. I certainly do. I just unfortunately don't know. I only know when it's posted on Twitter. My system only tells me when it's posted on Twitter. This is for the video. Huge reveal. Monica wanted to avoid the lawsuit. Shouts out to Christian A, Omni the God Dream, Pot on the Brain, Casey Bear Cosplay, The Burning Magician, Random Fandom, Mr. Anime 343, Von Brucken, Drunken Bird Cosplay, Drac Caprico, Star Glazed Muffins, ooh, that sounds good, Paragon Laced into Vamp Guard, Mashed Up Potatoes, Tro's Girl, Carvasu, Samantha, Skelekitty, Mike, Mr. G, and Mr. Gray twice. Hey, Mr. Gray, thank you, dog. You always post it multiple times. It's funny. I think like yesterday he posted like 5 times. I don't know. It's funny, man. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your support. Hopefully, I'll see you guys in the Discord. If not, I'll see you in the next video or live stream. Peace.